want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops across the country. Register for these at RealTuners.com. Click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more info or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us at RealTuners LLC on Facebook. Learn how to tune your own systems like Holley, Fuel Tech, Megasport Fast, and now GM factory ECUs on the chassis dyno. And we've announced a new GM Gen 3 and 4 2-day class taught by James Short of Shore Tuning. Our classes cover topics such as traction control, individual cylinder tuning on a budget, safe tuning for maximum power, and power adder tuning. Upcoming classes with available seats are as follows. Detroit, Michigan, standalone EFI Essentials on June 31st and July 1st. Nano Nitrous in Kansas City on July 21st and 22nd. Our next GM factory ECU class is August 11th and 12th at Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stay tuned for more fall and winter dates. Sign up for updates at RealTuners.com. These classes are designed to help you get your project running successfully in a course taught by people who actually do this stuff for a living. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RealTuners Radio, episode 53, our 1-year anniversary. Tonight's guest, Stephen Goldade from HPTuners, and returning and always welcome fluid transfer guru, Jeff Stacy from Aeromotive, who also brings us some inside info about Larry Larson's new single-turbo 481X power plant racing in the Street Outlaws and Oprep King series. Keeping you smart as always are our hosts, including John Bewley from Little John's Motorsport Solutions, Tom Sewell from Fuel Injector Development, James Short from Shore Tuning, Mark Dahlquist from Throttles Performance, Bill Fowler from Bear Brakes, Scott Evans with Helix Tuning, Cody Bruce and Mo Lonis from Nano Nitrous, Chad Reynolds from Bangshift.com, Dan Parker the movie star, and Rye Klemp from Bull City Speed. My name is Scott Clark, and welcome to RealTuners Radio, episode 53, our 1-year anniversary show.
And they made it so open so you can actually put anything for any cable.
Good evening, everybody. What's going on? Got my guys talking in the background already. So, it's our little 1-year anniversary show. Check it out. Kind of a cool thing. Go ahead and bring my guests in here for the evening. What's up, you guys? You're live.
What's up, Scott?
I got the little background intro. Welcome. Woohoo! It's our 1-year anniversary. Yay!
Woohoo! 1 year.
Party time.
It's a party.
Yeah.
Who's left from the original gang? Is it just you and me, Scott?
It's just you and me right now. Jay Curtin is listening, and he's trying to dial in, but he's picking the kids up from the skating rink, he said. But Jay was at our very first one, and our very first time. We did the very first podcast from his apartment right before he moved out. It was kind of funny. But,
Well, who else was on the first one? Zach Freeman?
Zach Freeman was on. He listens sometimes, but he's like, I'm not into tuning.
Yeah.
Who else? I think that was it. I think that was
the
it.
First one, yeah.
No, Delgado chimed in on the second one.
Delgado.
Yeah.
I didn't make it till about number 7 or so.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Okay. And
it
that's
was
when
like 6 or 7, yeah.
things started coming around. But, man.
I distinctly remember you telling me that I wasn't allowed to join until like number 10.
Right. That was basically, I'm not sure if we're ready for Chad Cannon yet.
Had to get that background check and that credit check.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, the credit check sucked. We're all in trouble there.
Yeah.
You expect my credit to pass for anything. The background check might actually be easier than the credit check.
My credit's so bad I can't get a prepaid phone card at Walmart.
That's pretty bad. Holy cow. So, welcome aboard, everybody. It's
Yeah, but you know what the good thing with Dan Parker is? That no matter what he signs, he can be like, dude, I couldn't read the fine print. Like, I'm out. I didn't pay it because I didn't know I had to.
He's got
Do they have like fine print braille?
Yeah, do they have that in braille for contracts? I bet they don't for a lot of that stuff.
They would send it to an embosser and braille it for you. You'd have to read it.
Oh, God.
I'm a old
That's awesome.
Down.
Good Lord.
How long did it take you to learn braille, by the way?
I still don't know it. Yeah.
You still don't? I'd be screwed. My fingers are so tore up, I wouldn't be able to feel it. Like, I've been working on cars too long to do that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Are you
if
trying?
You read braille, you have to be one of those guys that goes and gets a manicure and shit, you know?
Right.
One of those guys.
One of them.
One of those guys.
Not Dan Stein.
Only one kind of braille I can read, and that's the little bumps around a woman's nipple. It stands for lick here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hey, it is a 1-year anniversary.
Nipples sounds like a perfectly good topic. I'm sure that's going to turn off, whatever. It's going nowhere good. So never mind.
Dude, there's no good way to go on that.
No, clearly not. Oh, Lord. So, well, kicking off that whole 1-year thing, I didn't even have a good show planned until like 2 hours ago. And I messaged Eric Brooks and I'm like, dude, we got to get somebody from HPTuners on here. And he's like, I can't do it. I would love to. I still think he's chickening out, but he sent us to his guy, Steven, who is an actual engineer there, specializing in the Mopar stuff. Steven Goldade, welcome aboard, man. How's it going? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Nice. Okay.
I've been sort of traveling around a lot this week, driving a lot. So,
is this a work travel thing?
You want to do something that yeah, it's work travel stuff, and it's basically moving from where I'm normally at. I'm up in North Dakota.
Okay.
And the office is down here in Illinois, and I drove down here, and I'm beat. I'm ready to relax, so I figured, why not?
Good call, man. No, you can be nice and loose on this show. That's no problem. So where are you at in North Dakota, just out of curiosity? Because we have another host on here from North Dakota. We have in Fargo.
I'm in Bismarck. So
Bismarck. Holy shit. I've actually taught a class there. I know where that's at. Yeah. No, I taught a class up there at Jeremy Lee Race Cars last year. I don't know if you know Jeremy or not. Drag racer. But anyway. No, that's super cool. So you work remotely then. You get to work from home. What do these guys, I mean, you work in development is my understanding, right? You develop some of the applications or some of the specific makes, models, ECU specialties, I would guess. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
So primarily what I'm doing is I'm the guy reverse engineering stuff to find where maps live in the memory so that we can edit them and get them into the software. I do a lot of that for Dodge. We announced a lot of new vehicle support recently, and I've had my hands in almost every one of them except for the Nissan stuff. A lot of them you'll notice are Bosch-based controllers, and I have pretty good understanding of those. So the Volkswagen, the Audi, Hyundai, that kind of stuff.
Got it. So is all the Bosch stuff somewhat similar? I mean, is it some by ECU manufacturer, or is it a family thing, or what makes them similar to each other?
So Bosch will manufacture one of the possible, or they'll manufacture like a family of controllers, right? And they'll all have a similar process. They're similar output drivers, every 4-cylinder one's got, these 4 injector drivers, or they have 6, 8, whatever they need to drive. A lot of them are going to be pretty much similar at like the core, like they're representing spark the same way. They're representing their torque models the same way. Some of the differences might be in the actual output. Almost every manufacturer has their own custom fan controls, for example. Why? Just because they do. So a lot of it's similar. Once you start to tune one Bosch, and if you move to another one, you'd be like, oh, hey, this is pretty similar. And some of the guys who might be able to pick up on it really quick, or I don't know how many people have done it, but like the V6 Camaro from, I want to say 2011 to maybe even currently, is on a Bosch-based controller. So if you look at one of those, the way the spark tables are laid out, the way they do the cam stuff, all that's it's gonna look almost exactly the same if you do any of the new supported vehicles that we've been adding for that.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you're figuring this stuff out, I mean, that's super interesting to me, the reverse engineering part. I mean, do you basically sit there with an ECU and you're trying to locate what addresses are table space? And then do you have to figure out what that table does? I mean, there's no like documentation. It's not like you can pull out comments from code because you're working with something that's compiled already and it's machine language, right? So what do you do? How do you do? What's the process, or whatever you can share?
Yeah, because the OEs don't want you to do this. I mean, you're basically having to hack into these things, right?
It all depends. It's not getting any easier. Not only are they working harder to protect what's running on the ECU, but there's more complicated models. There's more things to try to figure out. So the big way I would start, like if I get brand new ECU on my desk, and it's like, well, we got to figure out what to do. First thing we're going to try to do is figure out just how do we write a factory calibration to it? How do we read a factory calibration out of it? We got to be able to do what they can do first before we can even start to hopefully make changes. Next thing I'm probably doing is actually doing some sort of scanner definition. I'm looking at SAE PIDs because I know they're all the same.
Oh,
everybody.
Right. Yeah, OBD2 specifies that.
You know where engine RPM is.
God.
Yeah, so then you go backwards from the engine RPM, you find where it is used everywhere, you find your spark time, you find that stuff, and then you can start to find, some sort of structure somewhere that, okay, this looks like a spark table. I got RPM on one axis and load on the other.
Yeah.
And the output's going into the spark PID. Eventually, it's probably a spark-related table.
So you can track that. You can somehow track that the table's tied to what PID.
Yeah, so you're looking through the machine code, you're following it where all these variables end up, and you're trying to figure out, what's my end result? What determines this final spark value? And you go through, we have, software that uses multiple different machine code disassemblies and puts it into kind of a readable format for you.
Oh,
and then you go through, you might have to learn a new language if it's a new processor or things like that. But
so it's not as simple as what we're doing like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not as simple as what we used to do back in 98, 2000, 2002-ish with the IDA and reading the thing out and looking at it there. It's considerably more difficult, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we're still using IDA. Some of the stuff, we write a lot of our own custom plugins and stuff to help us out with some of the more obscure processors and things like that, so that we can try to, the memory space is expanded. You're talking, if you're talking 1996, we're looking at an E5 controller. We got 112 kilobytes on it. That's it. Now, 112 kilobytes is like, that's the entire Ford HDFX Spark table setup. So you got a lot more memory to deal with. We got a lot more memory to figure out where it's all going. So one of our main hopes is that they keep things similar year to year and they just tack new things on. So we can go find what we've already found, and then we can find the new stuff that they added. But like I said, if it's brand new, you're starting from scratch. You start with what you know they have to do, and you work your way backwards. Eventually, you start getting enough tables set up, things like that. What we typically do then is we're going to get a test vehicle of some kind. We're gonna figure out, is this actually what this table does? We're gonna log it. We're gonna drive it. We're gonna try to figure out if changes that we make to these tables actually have effects, things like that.
Gotcha.
So at first, you're just making an educated guess. You're almost playing crossword puzzles and hoping you get the right word. Really, right? You're kind of just connecting the dots.
It's kind of how it is.
Dang, that's a lot of work.
So it's very much like that. Yet a lot of times you'll make a guess on something, and then you'll have to test your guess. You're gonna have to figure out, did I guess right the first time? You'll go and you'll make a change, and you'll think, this was a nice spark table, and here you find out this is actually something to deal with knock retard or
right. That was my next question: is how do you find that
out,
out, though? I mean, because there's so many different levels and places where that number might get scaled or modified or tweaked before it ends up as the resultant timing.
How many rental cars have you had to say, "Hey guys, can you come get this? It doesn't run."
We don't do anything to our rental cars. I swear.
That's the lease cars, right?
Oh shit. Jeez.
Yeah. So, a lot of times we're actually, we'll pick up a company vehicle because we'll need it for a lot longer than what we could probably get a rental for cheaply. It makes more sense to actually just buy the car.
Yeah.
Or get a lease deal on something, you know, and just pick it up and then try to sell it back and recoup some of the, hopefully not take a big hit on it, but regardless of what you do, it's, you know, cars depreciate quick. So
yeah. So you generally need a car.
But we always hope that we can hopefully,
Okay.
we hope we can make it back by providing software for other people, but we'll see how it goes.
No, it seems to be working.
Sometimes we try to.
What about stuff like with the like I know that Mopar is significantly different than the GM stuff in its modeling. I mean, how does that get defined, or how do you guys figure that stuff out? I mean, neural network, you hear people talking about. I mean, basically that just tells me, okay, there's just a whole different method. You know, this isn't just your simple standalone with a pulse width table. I mean, I'm more curious about how you learn, or what the process is to learn how all those models and algorithms work for each application. I mean,
to be a little technical here, my background, I went to college. I did electrical engineering. A lot of the stuff that I was interested in when I was in college and the courses I took were actually geared towards control systems, just controlling anything in general. You have an input, you have a desired output, make it work.
Right.
An ECU is really just one giant. There's a reason we call them controllers, right? That's what they do.
Sure.
So I have a good background in that kind of stuff. So I know what, you know, if I see something that looks like it's a PID, it's pretty quick to identify it.
Gotcha.
Things like neural networks are a lot harder to pull out of thin air. Where we sometimes get lucky on that stuff is we'll go and we'll look at a patent that they've published, right? Ford, you know, almost all of Ford's controllers, for example, are every little process is patented. And then you can go in the code and you can follow it, and it's almost word for word what the patent says is exactly what they're doing. So using that and kind of cross-referencing it, you can figure out, you know, well, this is how the system's working, things like that. It's another level. You know, we show you the neural network and Dodge stuff, but, you know, actually tuning the neural network is another task in itself. There's been a lot of requests to get stuff done so that, you know, it's more easily, so we can do something that's tractable for an end user, because I don't know about you guys, I can't tune the neural network by hand, so.
I've not tried. James Short, have you messed with any of the Mopar stuff?
I'll just disable it.
Gotcha.
Because you disable it, they've got, you know, twin VE tables, which usually they just run off one of them. So
yeah, dumb it down, make it.
Be the bearer of bad news, but those are disappearing.
Are they?
Some of the newest stuff in the newest 2018 stuff, it doesn't appear that they're there anymore, is what I was told.
Oh, fabulous. So it's going to be quadratic equations and 6, you know, entity tuning, basically.
Ugh.
It's more complicated than that even. You know, the way neural networks are normally trained is using methods from calculus and stuff. It's something you have to get a calculator out to do it. I'm sure Dodge, when they're doing it at the OEM level, has you know, some tools somebody's written out. We're hoping that we can get something similar to that so that we can help users actually tune it, you know, in a way that makes sense.
Right.
So we can show it. I'm sure you've seen, like, we have calculators for like GM's virtual work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're hoping to be able to do something similar for the neural network. But
that'll be cool.
Get an actual VE table out of it.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Now, do you have to write code for that, or do you write something that translate from that code or from the resultant? I mean, is that VE table that you build, doesn't live on the ECU, or does it live on the ECU? Are you actually ever writing code or adding code?
No, it's a calculator.
Got it.
Much.
It's a converter then. Okay.
Yeah. We're taking the data that's there, we're making it user friendly, tuner friendly. I'm sitting on a dyno, I can't figure out a neural network friendly.
Right. Okay, but so you still got to figure out the neural network and how to translate from whatever it is you're presenting to the tuner. you still got to figure out how to make that become, okay, give me what I want for this VE table, but all neural network style then? Or is that, I mean, I still don't understand what the link is between. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got to figure it out both ways. So we got to take like that neural network, we got to turn it into a table view, for example, in volumetric efficiency, which is what actually comes out of the neural network. The final value that comes out of that is a volumetric efficiency number. There's 4 inputs to it, though. For example, it uses engine RPM, uses the pressure ratio of the engine, and then it uses your intake cam centerline and your exhaust cam centerline. So similar to like if you've seen the virtual torque, we're going to have to do something similar like that, where you're putting in conditions and it's giving you out the table that would be generated. You'd modify that table, and then it would reverse it back, calculate it, put it back in the neural network form so it's usable.
Oh, God. So it requires you to have a thorough understanding of said neural network then.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, the neural
network be really good with an Excel spreadsheet.
So the neural network is very, very similar to the GMVE stuff then. It's just a different name for it, correct? Where it deals with, cam timing and all that stuff.
Right. So it's a different method of achieving the same goal. So what their goal was our little 2D map isn't working so well anymore. We got more input, and how do we represent something of a higher dimension in a way that can be calibrated and put into, millions of cars that they're building or things like that. They need to be able to generate reliable calibrations in all these various conditions. When you're sweeping your cams back and forth and stuff like that, the VE, your engine changes, so you're going to need to be able to measure that so you can get your fueling correct, so you can get your spark correct, all that stuff. So GM is using like quadratic equations to do it. Ford uses the HDFX system where you got 16 tables, 32 tables, however many it is on that particular application, all blended together. And then Dodge's way of doing it is through this neural network where it's basically like a giant complicated equation. You get those 4 inputs and it spits you out a VE number.
Gotcha.
So the end goal is the same thing. They're trying to represent highly dimensional data, 4 or 5 dimensions to it, things you can't visualize in your head, but get it into a form they can put on a controller, and then something that they can build a tool to assist, their engine calibrators to actually get something reliable out the door.
It's my understanding it was to save memory space on ROMs as well as calculating power, and it was also something for the engineers to drum up to keep a job. It sounds like.
It's very possible. Some things it used to be a lot older controllers were a lot tighter on memory. Now it seems like you can go out and buy a 64 gigabyte flash drive for nothing. They can put that kind of thing onto the board themselves if they need to. But a lot of times, one of their constraints is time. They're calculating so many things hundreds of times a second, and the more complicated the system gets, the more calculation time it takes. And if they want accurate VE and they want it updated a blink in the eye, they might have to resort to methods that can break it down to equations that can be executed quickly. It can your ECU can add and subtract, multiply, divide real quick.
Yep.
Can't
rather
solve
than look it up.
equations. Yeah. So there's always trade-offs. They make that, some engineer or engineering team at the OEMs comes up with that idea and puts it to use. And we spend our time trying to figure out, how the heck does it work, and can we make it usable for an end user?
To simplify the whole neural network idea for people, because I know there are probably some people going, what the hell is a neural network? There are plenty of guys who are used to looking at just, hey, here's your manifold pressure and here's your RPM, right? 2 dimensions, 2 axes, that's it. The neural network is basically like saying, hey, now we're going to add a Z dimension, so now it's 3 dimensions, plus another dimension that's 2 dimensions off of that Z on top of the other ones, plus another 2 dimensions off of each one of those. So now you got a bunch of tree branches sticking out everywhere for tuning instead of just an XY.
And then you
Right.
have to figure out what to do with it or what they're doing with it. That's what blows my mind.
And then sometimes they throw in time just for the hell of it.
So is
Yeah,
there any,
it's not something simple that you can just do on the back of a napkin somewhere. So that's why we come up with calculators. We did one for the Ford speed density stuff, which was it's a quadratic, but it's got some special conditions to it. So it took a lot of effort, a lot of time to get it into something that we could make a reliable calculator with. And it's still touchy. Like you can, if you're way off on your numbers and it doesn't fit the math that's in the background, you're not going to get good results. But it turns out if you're lucky and the numbers you put in are close to what an actual engine's like, you get good results back out, which is why the OEMs put that model in the first place.
what about the hardware architecture on these guys? Are they multi-processor on a given ECU or typical automotive cars right now? I mean, I know a lot of the standalones are starting to have like a dedicated time processing unit, and separate processors talking to each other internally to the ECU. Are the OEMs that way already, or been that way a while, or not?
Yeah, the OEMs have had multiple processors in some of these for quite some time. For example, if you look at Ford, my background before I started was actually in Ford stuff. It wasn't in Dodge stuff. I kind of picked that up as I went along. Ford had a main processor that was doing all the heavy lifting of the math, looking up tables. That's where all the tables live. There is another processor on the side that literally did nothing but control like an electronic throttle body. And they'd communicate back and forth, keep each other up to date on, this is what the throttle body's doing, and then the ECU says, this is what I want it to do. And they're communicating over a given bus, getting this done. And then if you go even more modern, a lot of stuff, you might have heard of a tri-core processor, for example. It's not called tri-core because it doesn't have 3 cores in it. It does have 3 processors into one chip there, similar to like you can go get a quad core Intel processor, for example.
Right.
Not all of them are necessarily, it doesn't necessarily function exactly like your computer does, but it does have capabilities to do multiple different paths of logic at once.
Damn. Okay, that makes sense. So they're way ahead on the and I guess in your opinion, the reason for such complexity on the OEM ECUs, I mean, I've told people the simple answer is because those guys are literally trying to meter and very carefully control fuel quantity every time that the intake valve opens up and that cylinder takes a gulp. I mean, is there more to it than that, or is it? I mean, I know they're integrating other functionality, ABS, stability control, blah blah blah. I mean, but still, what's the reason? What are your thoughts on why the complexity has grown so much, or in the last say 20 years?
So I think a big driver of a lot of it has been trying to meet certain standards across the entire world. For example, the onboard diagnostic standard. When OBD2 came out, processors suddenly had to do a lot more. Before they were just worrying about controlling your spark timing and your fuel injection timing, and they didn't need to be too complicated to do that. But now they had to monitor things. They had to give stuff back. They had to give a common error code, which means they had to be monitoring everything for errors. A lot of what is actually going on in the ECU, we aren't even necessarily showing because there's huge amounts of diagnostic stuff going on in the background. There's other things that are controlling the actual responses to OBD commands, or they're sending messages across buses to other modules. Like they're telling the ABS module, I'm giving you this much torque, so and it's like I don't want that much. There's constant movement towards basically putting a computer in everything, so that you know if things are going wrong. You have better control over it. You can build more reliable engines because you have more faith in it actually hitting the fuel targets, hitting the spark targets. There's a lot to it. Some of the drivers are going to be, you know, emissions. Some of it's going to be fuel economy standards. Some of it's going to be for stuff just like we do this because it helps, you know, it makes the car drive better.
Sure.
So there's a lot going on. They're constantly adding more. You know, nowadays you can't even buy an Econo box without a reverse camera, and that reverse camera's got to have a processor in it. It's got to have the actual communication stuff. So I think a lot of it is being done by the OEMs. It's being driven by their desires to make more efficient engines, make more reliable engines, and meet some really, really hefty targets. A lot of the emissions targets and the fuel economy targets are getting really tight, and they're continuing to push engine technology to the next level, adding complexity, adding cost, and then they need something to control it all. So the controllers are just getting more complicated as we go on.
Gotcha. And of course, the cost of technology and implementing that goes down over time. So it allows higher tech for a given spend. I understand that from the engineering management side. So that makes sense. That's interesting. A lot of insight there. It's funny you bring up things like the reverse camera. My HPTuners story, and really, I just don't do factory ECUs very well. I'm learning, but standalones, I do a ton of different standalones. But the first time I met Eric Brooks, ironically enough, was I needed help with a project that kind of a weird project. It was a ZL1 Camaro, 2013 or 14 or 14, I think. Tom McGilton's car. It was on the cover of Hot Rod magazine, and Larry Larson built it, and it was been on Drag Week. It's won at the Class at Drag Week and Rocky Mountain Race Week, and anyway, really nice car. And I got in touch with Eric because I just knew him from some common Facebook groups we were on. No, he had sent me a couple of guys that needed standalone help. That's how that's how I knew him. Anyway, never met him in person. Haven't even talked to him on the phone ever. But I messaged him. I'm like, help! They got this car, and it's got a 600-inch big block Chevy with twin 88s, and it's a Drag Week full on. Not the unlimited class, but the next one down, the all steel car class. Competitor. It's capable of like high sixes, low sevens in the quarter mile, but they want the reverse camera to come on when the TH400 shifts into reverse, and it was a manual car to begin with. Anyway, Eric rounded up guys for me on very short notice, and they gave me, I was getting like little executables from a command window to run, and they were doing stuff that was talking over the network to some of the different computers in the car, but they helped me revive all the OEM shit. Everything works in the car, like the OnStar stuff, everything works except they got rid of the ABS controller and they made it happy there. A couple other little things that they changed around, but anyway, that was when I met the HPTuners guys, and I was like, oh man, this stuff is super useful in certain situations. So anyway, that's how we all hooked up. Kind of a long, boring story.
Yeah, that car ended up with every single thing working from the factory except cruise control and ABS. And the cruise control is now what controls the overdrive transmission.
Larry disabled the remote start on purpose. He had us disable the remote start. And I thought it was pretty badass because, I had the key start work. And I remember the first time I had the keys in my pocket, and he's like, all right, it should work now. Let's just try this. I hit the sequence with the button for the remote start, hit the lock twice and the start button, I think it was, and it was lights right off, and it's a 3,300 horsepower streetable Drag Week style streetable motor, and it was just pretty badass. You drop it in reverse and the camera comes on, and I remember like he was getting flustered because the Bluetooth came, he was standing in his phone 10 feet away from the car, and his phone rings and it goes on the Bluetooth in the car, and we're standing by the car and you can hear it's like hello, but it just all that shit worked. And it was super cool, and they were super helpful. Oh my God, we would have been nowhere on that project without the HPTuners guys. Anyway, so shout out to your whole crew for that.
I do want to address one thing where he said that they didn't do anything to rental cars, because I will gladly admit that Scott Clark and I have.
No, don't drag me into your shit. I don't like doing that. Yeah, don't drag me into that. I'm just riding shotgun.
We did. We were developing ECU stuff, and we cut up some rental cars to make sure stuff worked, and then put them all back together and returned them, and they were
We didn't
perfect
cut nothing.
in every way.
Sort of.
Sure.
No, I mean, we were testing standalones though, and we were testing them on a bunch of different cars and playing around with different Hall sensors and different VR sensors and things like that, and seeing how it worked. And it was very enlightening stuff.
Meanwhile, there's somebody for Avis Rent-A-Car looking up all their records for you right now.
Nope, wasn't in my name.
It wasn't Avis, so it's all good. I still rent regularly from this company. They love
Poor
me. It's
Mladen,
fine.
right? The guys that helped rent, yeah. The names you put those under.
It was awesome though when you would roll in there and you're like, yeah, I need a Hemi car. And they're like, what?
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, our boss thinks
right?
buy one. We could rent one with a Hemi in it.
We don't really care. What do you mean? We don't really care what the car is. It's just got to have the 5.7 Hemi in it. I remember that. That was right when it came out too. Or
You're supposed to look that shit up before you go in.
Cars,
You want
and
that
the
specific car.
counter was awesome.
No, I'd tell him what we want roughly, and then Chad would just go like figure it out. That was his job there. But yeah, I'd be like, all right, we need this family. Yeah, that was interesting stuff. The R&D process is amazing, but hats off to you guys, man. God, Steven, you guys, that is hardcore to me. And I mean, I worked in IT. I'm not an engineer by degree, but department management for teams that maintain thousands of nodes on networks and servers and different hosts and stuff like that, mostly Unix type stuff. So not even a great programmer. I could do some mad Perl scripts in my day, but simple shit. But so I have a ton of respect because it's almost harder than writing your own code to do this stuff, figuring out how someone else is doing it. And especially at the OEM level, the cutting edge, it's kind of like the Formula One of that world.
I agree.
So that's super badass. Go ahead, accept your accolades. Or did I mute him? No, we didn't. Okay.
Well,
right.
we're trying to deliver products that people can use. You know, a lot of our engineering team started. We were just trying to figure out how to tune whatever car we had at the time, and we had the technical know-how to start breaking things. And finding our way eventually to a company where we can all work together to break things, right, and share the joy of breaking things with everybody else.
Right. No.
Speaking of breaking things, I know this is top secret stuff, but any news on the ZR1 cracking?
No updates at this time. It's obviously it's out there that this is something that people are going to want to tune. We're aware of it. We're working on it, but I don't have any time updates or anything like that.
My guess is it's a huge priority, and they're doing the best they can. I mean, I would think. You know what I mean? It's just throwing that out there. Not to you, Steven, but that's to James.
Yeah, right.
Really.
And GM's making it harder every year. So Dodge is making it harder every year. Ford is doing things.
Yeah.
But it's every manufacturer is starting to move into more security things. Some security related stuff got into the news. People got scared that, oh my God, somebody could hack my car like Fast and the Furious and drive me off the road, stuff like that. So a lot of manufacturers are starting to take real looks at the security of their networks and things like that, making sure that the only people that are on the given bus or stuff like that are the people that they want to be on there.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, that's a big concern, like 2020, right? I mean, from what I understand, they're worried about getting into a lot of the OEM controllers a couple years from now.
Couple of unnamed guys from Cummins attended one of my classes 2 years ago in Indiana, in Indianapolis, the one we did at Fat House Fabrication, Jeremy Howell and those guys. And they said that at the time they were starting to do that authorized use. Apparently Cummins and whoever their controller, I would guess it was Bosch, they were making it really hard. And hard even for the guys that worked as calibrators to make tweaks to tunes. Like they would do stuff like tune on their buddy's truck or take logs or observe it or whatever. And I mean, they were fighting DPF stuff at the time still. That was their biggest concern, was how to make all that stuff work reliably or catch it, problems, whatever. And yeah, I just remember they were saying the same thing a couple of years ago. They're like, oh my God, Cummins makes it hard even when you're a calibration engineer. That's like, you know, they have a system that won't let you in with logs, everything, you know, every time you check in or change something. And then, you know, I mean, I would guess that's hackable on the backside somehow, but for the guys that were OEM, he was saying what a pain in the ass it was to use. I mean, it literally would require them to have online connectivity to some database to give them access or to check their authority.
Yep. Right, and it's a pain for everybody, designed to protect. You know, I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere that said, you know, oh God, you know, we got to make sure that nobody can sue us for their car getting hacked or something like that, and now it's a pain in everybody's side. Big pain in the aftermarket world, but you know, we're committed to providing solutions no matter what it has to be. You know, we've been working our way through exceedingly complex controllers, and we're trying to stay a step ahead and be just as smart as they are.
Yeah, you guys have been killing it lately, to be honest.
Modify their cars.
Yeah, you guys are killing it lately. All sorts of different brands, new products that came out. They're figuring it out.
Yeah, speaking of new products, why don't you talk a little bit about the MPVI2 interface that's been out for a few weeks now?
The MPVI2 is our obviously, you guys probably all seen it. It's our newest device. It's a much smaller device. It's a much more modern device. It's a lot more powerful. It's a lot faster. It's got a lot of stuff on board that we're hoping to be able to do some pretty cool things for you guys in the near future. Can't tell you everything, but some of the things we've talked about and that we've announced are things like standalone data logging, but not just for, it used to be that it was select GM controllers, but we just want to do it for everything. Things like actual standalone tuning, not necessarily needing a laptop in the car to tune the car. And there's a lot more planned and a lot more coming for it. We're pushing it out. We're getting it out there early for people to get a hold of. You know, the MPVI 1, as we now call it, it was a 14-year-old product that surprisingly was still kicking butt, still able to talk to modern controllers, things like that. But you know, there are just parts on there that were getting hard to source and things. And if you open up a later MPVI 1, you'll notice the insides look a little different than the old ones, because we had to constantly be on the change for that, to find new components that could be used. But we got a good hardware team right now that is totally kicking butt on figuring out you know, ways we can make the best devices for an end user. And you know, a lot of us started doing tuning ourselves. You know, we kind of know, you know, what sucks about our product.
Sure.
You know, what might be user unfriendly.
Yeah.
And our goal with the MPVI 2 was to solve as many of those problems as we could, as well as put things in the controller, the actual MPVI 2, that will allow us to expand in the future.
Awesome. Speaking of expansion, I understand that you're going to have some sort of plug-in box on the expansion module to where you can do analog inputs, digital inputs, or maybe even thermocouple inputs or something to that effect.
Right. So we have a planned expander hub coming as soon as we can get them off the presses and get them manufactured and sold. We actually were surprised that MPVI 2 itself, we had quite a few units made, and we were hoping we'd have enough to meet our initial demand, and they were selling so fast, and we're putting in giant orders to try to meet all the demand we're getting on the new stuff. We hope to get the expander hub out so that we can. We realize one of the things we left out is, you know, if I want to go and I want to tune my Gen 3 Camaro, I'm kind of screwed because I have no way to log the wideband anymore.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So the goal with the expander hub was to take some of that functionality out that might not be in the newer vehicles. Like a lot of them are coming with factory widebands these days and stuff, but to actually take that pro feature that was used to just be basically analog inputs and make it better. Not only are you going to have analog inputs, you'll have various outputs, other things available on the expander hub, and other products that we hope to be able to build around it in order to build, help you build a better race car if that's what you're after,
Oh, so you're almost making it almost standalone-ish, where you can add on.
Standalone.
Right.
That's what that is. Yeah.
Right. So that's one of our thought processes on it. We also wanted it to be, cheap enough because we know like nobody wants to pay $500 to have analog inputs in addition to what they have. But we wanted it to be a powerful thing dedicated just to doing analog inputs really well, as well as it's also capable of doing digital inputs. As far as I'm aware, there's also plans for it to have various outputs. But the end goal, I know it's huge. It's huge that people want it, as soon as we can. We're taking our time to build a quality product. We don't want to push something out that's gonna disappoint because everybody's gonna get it and they're gonna be like, well, this sucks. You got a lot of noise. You got a lot of issues. We want to put out a quality product.
Yeah.
And that's currently the phase that the expander hub is in our testing, our final testing phases. We're hoping to get it out as soon as we can.
I just got visions of a deal you pop in the car that has like the 5 stages of progressive nitrous controls, all integrated, with one, in the existing logger, basically standalone minus the engine control. You know what I mean? Adding all the options there, dude. There's money in that. Just saying. Yeah.
And we realized that, and that's one of the reasons we broke it out. We wanted to make that part of what the MPVI Pro offered. We wanted to make that better. Because we realized there's a lot of use there. There's a lot of things where, people would say, oh, can I hook this up? Can I hook that up? And it's like, well, not really, unless you convert the signal to be in this format.
Right.
So we wanted to build something that's better. We want, if you want to be able to plug in thermocouples, wide bands, all that kind of stuff, we want to be able to support that, bring it into our scanning software, which, allows you to plot it out, allows you to do math and all that fun stuff, create really complicated things if that's what you need for your tuning. Whereas if you're just a guy who's planning on tuning his new Mustang EcoBoost and you got a factory wideband, it's a lot cheaper barrier of entry to just get an MPVI-2 that doesn't have any of the analog stuff.
Yeah, it's a good one to start with.
That's why the MPVI-2 was kind of, the MPVI-2 was kind of to concentrate just on communicating with the vehicle and doing things directly with the controllers on the vehicle and flash the vehicle, log the vehicle, things like that. And by separating them out, just like the OEMs separate all their modules out, we're able to have focused development on that one part, make it do it really well, and exceed our previous stuff. We didn't want to put something out that was basically the MPVI 1.5. So we're moving forward. There's a lot of exciting things coming for the MPVI i2. We got, if you're impressed with the vehicle releases that we've had, we've got more on the way. We have a lot more capability with the MPVI 2 to work with a lot of different controllers. It was kind of funny to me anyways that, one of the big ones was like, oh, now you can use EC5. The previous MPVI 1 actually had issues being fast enough to initialize the flashing process on an EC5. Whereas the MPVI 2, it does that in its sleep. It's a much more modern design. It's much quicker.
Awesome.
That's some interesting stuff you got to cope with.
I was going to say, I think that's something most people don't realize is the factory ECUs are typically way ahead of standalones.
Way.
Actual, capability. The standalones we're using are probably the equivalent of ECUs from
the late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. No, I mean, they're to a degree for the racing and performance stuff. You don't need the precision that you need for the emissions and the economy stuff. Not necessarily. I mean, to a degree, you know, you always want to try and get spark accuracy, and you want to get the combustion pressure center, you know, consistent cycle to cycle and everything else. But still, that's interesting. Let's see.
Yeah, the OEMs have more things to worry about, but there's still, you know, a lot of the newer standalone stuff is getting right up there. You know, they got electronic throttle control, they got variable cam timing.
Sure.
And then you get things that you'll pretty much never see in a factory controller. You're not going to find a factory controller that's like, oh yeah, here's where you turn on the anti-lag. You know, that kind of stuff usually isn't available.
Right.
Because nobody builds cars that do that right out of the factory.
Right.
Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to go full Hondata on a stock ECU and like write their own code just for the hardware.
Has anybody messed with that in your area, Steven, that you know of, like placing replacement code in any segments or address spaces or anything like that?
Right. So I don't know if we've put out a bunch of videos. It's some of the people that have been testing have been putting out videos, but one of the things we have coming up is we have the new 10-speed in Ford, the 10R80. We worked out a trans brake system for it, and that's using custom code on the module, where we basically take control of the transmission ourselves to lock it into a certain to tie the transmission up and release one of the clutches when you release a paddle. So some of our inspiration for that was, you know, you look at the Dodge Demon and how they do their trans brake, for example, with the paddles. We're bringing that over into the Mustang. It's the same thing. You can hold two paddles with your foot on the brake. You stab the gas to activate it. You let off one of the paddles. You let off the brake, and it's just sitting there waiting to go. You don't have to go buy extra stuff to try to wire into the solenoid yourself and get it all. It's cranking the line pressure up itself. It's holding those clutches, and it's super quick. Another thing we added in with that is the capability to bump. So you don't need to buy a separate bump box. Instead, you just tap the paddle, and whatever you tuned it to, whatever duration for bumping you tuned, it does it for you.
Wow, that's cool.
We're hoping to get into more of that as we can.
As the hardware supports
bring in more of those neat things, especially as we get into new markets. Some markets they have a lot of those features available. There's a lot of, for example, the Nissan market. We added huge amounts of Nissan recently, and some other options might have, they might have flex fuel capabilities, things like that. So we're hoping to be able to continue to deliver the excellence we already do for our OEM stuff, but start to add on features like that people might want. I know there's already about getting trans brake on as many transmissions as we can, right? So, and we're hoping to put a system in place so that it's consistent, so that if you have a modern, clutch to clutch shifting transmission, we can put a trans brake in it just by, flashing a new TCM tune or powertrain control module tune if it's, combined. So it's something that.
Go ahead.
I want you guys to do me a favor, though. You need to interview people before you allow them access to either the trans brake or the bump box, or every douchebag, that
every
owns a
stoplight in the
Hellcat
country
or a new Camaro is going to sit there bump boxing his shit into the staging lane or into the beams. He already can't drive. We don't need that. That's seriously
hey, it's not the beams I'm
just
worried about. It's the stoplight down.
I
on
know,
3rd Street.
right? That's what I
gotta
can't
worry
wait
about.
to see.
Every other stoplight, and they burn everything up.
And they say
Oh, my
Mustangs are
fingers
going to have
so
that
fell
first.
That would be great, because then they won't be at my drag strip. I don't care.
Give it to
what
the
they
Mustang guys first. Great.
Dude, yeah.
Unfortunately,
so proud.
Unfortunately, it's kind of fitting that we put it on the Mustang first. We figure that way we'll get rid of most of the problems right out the gate.
This one's for the
it'll
Brooks
take
family.
care of itself. Yeah, and everybody left over will be able to enjoy trans brakes in peace. We won't have people bumping through lights and stuff. And once the Mustang crowd gets rid of those folk, we'll be good.
Oh,
that's awesome.
It's the innocent casualties, the crossfire that scare me. But yeah, the cars and coffee. We'll never be safe.
That's so awesome.
So,
and we do.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to give Eric Brooks shit for purposely mispronouncing your name, having me mispronounce it. That you bastard. Even his wife knows how to pronounce it. Sorry, just carry on.
Yeah, they were trying to distract me earlier because they finally made it back to the hotel, and they were trying to make sure that I screw up on phone too. He's not necessarily the most friendly person I've ever met. That's for sure.
That's interesting. I don't know if I want to work with that guy.
And you were
awesome.
saying that you've never talked to him on the phone in person. I'll tell you what, it isn't worth it. You wouldn't be able to understand him anyways. He's got the thickest Southern accent I think I've ever heard.
Oh, no kidding. That's hilarious. So that's kind of funny. I can't wait to talk to him then. Twice I went to his booth at PRI, and like one time he was there with like 40 people standing in line trying to talk to him, and the other time I think he wasn't there. He was out walking around or something, so I actually didn't get
It
to
was
meet
40 people standing in line trying to understand him.
Yeah. God.
Yep, that's what it was.
That's awesome.
So anyway. Well, who's got questions for Steven? Anybody? Do you guys see anything going by?
Somebody asked, is that new MPVI 2 Bluetooth compatible?
How does it connect to the laptop?
Yeah.
So you can use a cable. Obviously, we still keep that functionality. We have a Bluetooth device currently that we're hoping to be able to. Right now, you could use it, for example, with our Track Addict software, which is available for free on your Android phone. So you can connect to the MPVI 2. There's even a nice little helpful wizard that will help you connect it, and then you can use that to bring logging in while you're out on the racetrack or things like that. That's going to be expanding. Obviously, when we do standalone flashing, standalone data logging, and you're not connected to a laptop, it's got internal storage on there, and maybe we'll send files back over Bluetooth to your laptop, things like that. It does have that capability. Wi-Fi is a big one. We've been asked a lot of questions about that. There are plans to do a Wi-Fi version, because right now we're leaving out, anybody who's got an iPhone, you'll notice a lot of Bluetooth support isn't out there because they're a lot more restrictive with their Bluetooth, but they don't really have that problem with Wi-Fi. So
how many iPhone guys need to have that access anyway? Sorry.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's how the engineering team views it. But our marketing guys, they all have iPhones. They're all telling us, hey, we got to support it. It's half the market. Whatever. But
I like my iPhone.
We want.
That's why they're marketing guys and not engineers.
I got to apologize to
Obviously,
Ricky
we want to
Best.
support as many as we can.
Yeah. No, I got to apologize. We brought this up. Sorry, I got to apologize to Ricky at Holly because I made fun of them. They discontinued support for their 5.7-inch dash, so I did some V5 updates for their latest firmware came out for their standalones, their lead flagship standalones, and I've been installing those updates, but I ran into one where this guy had an older 5.7-inch dash, and I guess it was built for Windows CE. I don't know if anybody here is developing that stuff, remembers that stuff. That stuff was like the early 90s is when they started doing that. So, I mean, they officially stopped supporting it, I guess, just a few years ago or whatever. Microsoft finally did. But I'm like, dude, I didn't realize people were still developing that, even like in the 2000s. But I teased him about it, and he got super butthurt. But we love you, Holly. It's okay. It's just that I had to tell that guy, oh, sorry, your dash isn't going to work anymore. It's like, fuck. But
yep, good choices. Stay on version 4 or lose the dash.
I like the V5, man. The dot on the 3D, they plot the current dot on the 3D table. You can edit the surface in real time.
There's a lot of good things, a lot of good reasons to go to version 5. But if you own the 5.7, got to make that choice.
Yeah.
Either upgrade your screen.
Wait. Are you telling me, Scott, that they finally have the bouncing dot that you can edit
on the 3D
from like we
table.
did on the EMS Pro?
Like 11 years ago. Yes, they do have that finally.
Yes.
Yeah, they've had it.
Literally, that was 11 years ago.
but it's only been the
You'll
2
laugh at me, but I am looking at my EMS Pro software disk right now that is in
That's
front of me because I
classic.
still have my EMS Pro and Rusty, remember?
Like when they used to send out AOL discs. Remember that? He's got
Yeah.
wasted spark ignition
I
on his
still have the
LT
disc.
one. Nice. That's funny shit.
Yeah.
No, so I mean,
Well, I had to keep it like in case, So.
sure. No, I know where I can. Believe it or not, that hardware is still current. So Juan Gutierrez, my buddy from down south, is asking: is the software only compatible with the new hardware, or the old Pro flash boxes? Can they make use of it?
So we don't intend to ever sell a product that we just drop support for. So everything that your MPVI 1 did before, it still does now, and you can update to the latest software and you can still tune everything. A lot of the new vehicle support we have, though, if you want to be able to tune like the Nissans or any of the Volkswagen, the Audi stuff, Jaguar, all that new stuff, that's all MPVI 2 only. So some of that's due to basically just hardware restrictions. The MPVI 1 wasn't necessarily capable of getting the job done. We didn't have a way to do, for example, EC5 with the MPVI 1. So you need an MPVI 2 to be able to tune that. But if you just want to upgrade your software, it's you're not going to lose out on your ability to tune everything that you tuned before with it.
And
so
you said a lot of that.
Goal is.
Sorry, you said a lot of that was because of bus speed, right? Because it just didn't write fast enough to be able to handshake properly with those certain ECUs, right?
Right. The EX5 had a really fast initialization sequence you had to do to get it into programming mode that the MPVI 1 just wasn't capable of doing. It's kind of ironic that it can do all the modern stuff, but the old stuff had a big time constraint that it wasn't able to do. But the MPVI 2 now, there's a lot of capability there. Again, it's built to try to anticipate what's coming. It's not using all of its, it's not flexing its muscles at all. We have a lot planned for it, and we hope we can keep you guys excited. We're excited about it. It's going to be good.
That's awesome. Now, we talked with Eric about having one of you guys rotate on every week or every other week or however you want to do it. Get on whenever you want. So you have to keep us updated on the new products and stuff. That's interesting stuff. Man, what I'm going to throw out there, more training. God, work with somebody and get some training on these different families of controllers. It's tough stuff to learn. The problem is a lot of these people are new at it, and we got to teach them the theories behind just the basics. That's where standalones are a lot easier to teach on and to learn on. The downside is you got to install them, but some simplified approach to fueling the engine, then they get to catch up and learn what the engine actually wants, and then step up to more advanced controls that are, give you finer detail on certain things. But that's been the Achilles heel of our whole industry, both standalone or factory computer tuning, is getting people to understand what the hell's going on and get them trained.
And the thing is, it seems like there's more do-it-yourselfers anymore that don't want to rely on a tuner or a person to make their car run right. They want that ability to.
Well, they've got the tools now that are so affordable to do all this stuff themselves. You might as well just learn how to do it and not be locked in. Or you'd go rent the dyno time from a tuner, get a tuner's help for the big boy stuff, but do all the drivability, usability stuff yourself.
Yeah,
and the logging, but.
I'll tell you what, I really wish a lot of standalone manufacturers would take notes from HPTuners on their logger, because if I could log a Haltech, if I could log a Holly, if I could log all that stuff in HPTuners, I'd be one happy cat.
Oh yeah. No, the tools they have, the histogram stuff, it's amazing. I mean, when James showed me like how to get around in there, I realized how awesome of both a data capture and log viewer and editing system that is. So that's HPTuners has kind of always led the way for that, though. I'm looking at messages here or looking at questions, make sure I'm not missing anything. I can never get the Facebook comments to keep rolling. Sorry. Awkward pause. Talk amongst yourselves. Let's see here. Oh, Juan asked another question. He said, and the supported cars, the new list only works with MPVI 2. So there's certain cars that may not be supported with the older one.
Yeah, he just covered
Correct.
that, like the Nissans and
Oh,
some
sorry.
of the.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah,
catching
yeah.
up. Told you it didn't work. All right. Cool. Seems like we're caught up. Guys are laid back and easy tonight. They're going easy on us.
Right?
Soft on that one here. We're going to have, we got Jeff Stacy coming up. Stay tuned. He's getting ready to, he's in the green room right now, getting ready. I think, actually, he's listening.
I didn't know we had a green room.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be cool like that.
Dude.
Pretend like we're not all in our garages or basements or wherever spread across the country.
I'm sitting in a
Totally
car.
jealous. I didn't know we had a green room.
Are you in your
I'm
shop,
seriously.
James?
I'm in the shop getting ready to put a race pack in my car.
Cool. Getting ready to do some logging. What are you going to log?
I'm not logging anything. It's just a display dash.
Oh,
'cause
the
it's,
dash. Yep.
I don't have anything gauge wise in my car. So whenever you're stick shift racing, then you don't have a shift light or an RPM gauge or anything to go off of.
And factory ECU on that one?
No, it's on a Haltech.
It's on a Haltech. Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
The devil. Womp womp.
Oh,
There's an output to a light bulb.
Hey, I like my Haltech.
let me ask
No, I
you
like Haltech. I'm.
that.
It's.
What's with Haltech lately? Like Haltech has made a huge leap in the last year
the last couple of years,
or so.
their new shit's awesome. I mean, it's flagship. It's on some of the fastest cars out there. Especially like
I
big
know,
focus
but
on drag
I
racing.
mean, I don't mean this to be offensive, but it's like Haltech didn't do anything for 30 years. I mean,
no, they did.
It's like
They
built
did.
the system
Nah,
in
that's not true.
1980 and then quit
Just-
until now.
It was small updates and then a major revision.
Well,
For
what
you
it
domestic
was,
guys.
the biggest.
Yeah.
We've had it bad because like the LS stuff really jump started, domestic V8 stuff. It went to individual coil packs. Well, Haltech didn't have a box that would drive that stuff. They had the Platinum Sport that would, but you had to run the coils and wasted spark, and it never really took off. They didn't really market it for that, and they were real big in the import crowd.
Meanwhile, I tuned a ton of Haltechs on rotary motors the last 15, 20 years straight through, up till even now. You still run into old E-Series boxes that work just fine.
Good old bars. You just slide the bar up and down.
Shit, yeah,
all the way
whatever.
across the
I'll take
RPM.
it. Yeah, it worked. I was able to make those things jam. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the early Honda stuff. I was like, for whatever reason, I just had good luck with it. But
Yep.
anyway, no, so Haltech is, you're right, Chad. Haltech has been taken off, exploding. A lot of guys ran it on Drag Week last year. Obviously the Aussie guys like it. But anyway, so yeah, that's the story on Haltech. No, what I was talking about, James, I made the womp womp noise because he got rid of the standalone or got rid of the factory ECU and went standalone. So,
Oh, it's been I've been gone with that for a couple of years now.
yeah,
I still got a stock ECU on my other car though.
nice.
I have to keep a stock ECU. It'd be like sacrilegious to get rid of the stock ECU stuff since that's what I specialize in tuning.
Sure. Yeah, right. No, that's awesome. So okay. Well, I mean, Steven, I think that's all we got, man. Do you got any questions for us? I think we're going to talk to you guys offline about maybe providing some expertise to get on the podcast and kind of hang with us and give us some updates, talk about new cars and stuff. But you're always welcome back anytime, dude.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll have me, it's been a pleasure.
It's every Wednesday night, man.
I do want to warn you. I just want to warn you though. If you get Brooks on here, you're gonna need somebody to do closed captions on all your
And
available
sign language.
things so that everybody can actually understand what he's saying.
His Southern is that
Oh
bad,
my
huh?
God, that's awesome.
I didn't realize he was a
I
hillbilly.
lived in the South. I can figure it out.
You can
I
translate
can
for
translate I can translate the handful of words that nobody knows what they mean.
us? Like Betty White translate and jive. Oh, was it Betty White that did that in Airplane? Anyway, I don't remember that scene. But all right. Thanks, Steven. Good to hear from you, man. Stick around if you want to listen. Just go on mute. And then next guest that we got to introduce, check it out. One of our most popular podcasts was the episode where we talked with the guys from Aeromotive, Jeff Stacy, who's the vice president over there. And anyway, he is gracing us with his presence. I asked him to get on because they may have some new products, but they've also got some new news from the he's a crew member on Larry Larson's project, and they're racing that Street Outlaws No Prep Kings series right now. They made some huge changes and saw some stuff flashed across the internet, and he told me he could give us some straight scoop. So Anyway, without further ado, Mr. Jeff Stacy, are you on board and can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I am, and I can hear you.
Nice.
This is amazing.
Yeah. All right, cool. This is working good now tonight.
Hello, Jeff.
I just want to know about that wormhole generator on the front of Larson's car.
You're right to it.
Yeah, it's a wormhole generator. I wish it would generate a wormhole that made it look good because it looks like shit. It's horrible.
I like it.
Tell us how you really feel.
It's horrible.
Coming
like
from
it.
you,
Idiot.
Chad, that's
I'm
a
sorry.
compliment.
Right, that's a compliment from
It
Chad.
looks hideous.
But you know what? That's what people get when they jack with rules and they don't know what the hell they're doing. So,
I mean, did he get it from
I
a
agree
locomotive?
wholeheartedly.
Where did he find that thing?
there's some guys down in our neck of the woods that like pulling tractors. And
Yep.
when we
That's-
decided to go to a single, Roger didn't have anything bigger than a 118, so it kind of opened the door for us to go investigate some other people. And these guys had one and had it put together and to our door in about 2 days. So we thought we would at least try it.
Nice.
So
So
how big
what
is it?
size did it end up
How
being?
big is
want to
it?
know how big is it? Yeah.
We
That's
think
what
it's
she
big
said.
enough.
It seems like it's big enough. I mean, the big question is, were you able
Copy
to spool
that.
it? And I saw the video, and it looked like that thing was spooling up just fine at launch. Jeff told me offline it's just less than 3 seconds, and the thing is pretty much lit, right? I mean,
Yep.
Yeah. Yikes.
I mean, if you put a big enough motor behind it, it's got to light off.
well, and that's
Yeah, we
the-
actually went
Yeah.
down 50 cubic inches in motor size. So
Wow.
right. That's the big
Um,
news, but significantly up in airflow and power potential, though. Right.
yeah, and not having to add 400 pounds.
Right.
That's the thing we just weren't going to be competitive with. I mean, Ryan, the rules ended up being perfect for Ryan, 2,900 pound with twins that are 88s,
Yeah.
and that's about as light as he can get. So Penny had to bolt 400 pounds into his car. We saw what happened to him last week. Ryan outran him. So we knew we were in trouble after testing it Topeka with the 620 and twins. We could run 420s on a pretty hot, nasty racetrack, but we knew that wasn't going to be fast enough. So Larry had a customer that had a 481X sitting there, and Larry doesn't like to sleep. So him and Bob took the chore on of in 2 weeks converting that thing over, building headers, putting the motor in.
It
doing
turned out
everything.
pretty nice for a quick job like that, too, man. I thought it turned out really nice. I
And the
even
best
liked
thing
hood.
about it is that front end is the front end we blew off at Vegas.
I remember
for-
2015, right? 2015 Streetcar Supernats had an intake top.
Thank
pop
God
off.
we don't throw things away.
That's fucking awesome. No, that's cool. It looked neat. Looks like it's gonna work. And you guys went some rounds, as my understanding. Of course, I couldn't sift through the results from all the other drama, but it sounded like you guys went a couple rounds on the new combo.
Yeah, we got beat third round by, of all people, Jeff Lutz.
It happens. Tough competitor
That's
sometimes.
twice he's got us. Yeah, that's twice he's got us in no prep. But
That's
for
got to
the-
burn.
Yeah, for the fifth pass on the thing, we're pretty happy.
Yeah.
We're still 200 pounds heavier than what we can be. There's not any place to take 200 more pounds out of it, but we might be able to get 50 out of it.
Think you can make that work though? Then okay, good. That's good to
Yeah.
hear. I mean, didn't you guys finish second last year in the series in points?
I think we were actually fourth. I think it
Fourth?
was Birdman, Ryan, Chuck, and then us, but they didn't invite us to the first two races. So
Got it. Yeah. So how does that work? Of course.
they kind of had a head start on us. So
You guys draw from this hat. Right.
yeah, and that's the new controversy. But you know what? Without all those guys, we wouldn't be racing for $40,000. It's
still,
their sandbox. We want to play in it.
sure. It's not upsetting me, and the it's still something really cool to follow along that's going on current events wise. Gives us plenty to talk about. You know, those of us that are not racing in it. So I'm fine with it.
The cool thing is it almost guarantees that, us common folk get to race one of the movie stars. So, I mean, bigger feather in your hat than to go out there and whip them at their own games. So
Sure.
that's always fun.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though. The controversy has been so crazy since they announced that, this next round of, no prep, Kings races, because everybody was so mad that they scheduled them on top of other races. And And I found that totally entertaining. I think it's so funny that people just don't pay any attention. You know, when they announced this series, they said very specifically in the very first press release, we are going to take over the street car and no prep racing world. Now, everybody thought that was like bragging, like they were going to make it a big deal. But what that meant was they're going to kill everyone else if they can. And so I find it entertaining that everybody else was surprised. Now, I disagree with you completely, Jeff, on the it's their sandbox, so let them pull from one bucket and we'll pull from the other. I think that's absolutely bullshit. But obviously, everybody has an opinion on it. It would be totally okay if somebody wasn't trying to hide it. But that's where it becomes an issue. If you make a rule and you just do it and that's how it is and you're above board with it, then it is what it is. But when you try and be sneaky about something or you don't announce it, that's a whole other thing. And so that's where the controversy and the drama, I think, comes from over the last, week or what have you. But, but they're making money, and I think that they'll be good. And I think that this no prep thing will go for another couple of years, and then it will fade away into nothing. And they won't care, and we won't either, because we'll have regular drag racing still, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't there, so you don't know what all went on.
Yeah.
They didn't hide. They didn't hide much. Everybody knew. Before the first chip draw, what was going on. It's your choice. You can play their game, or you cannot play their game. If you're going to play their game, don't bitch about it. You got a chance to race for $40,000. You got to beat everybody to get to the finish, anyways. So what's it matter? I mean, in all reality, it's a disadvantage for them if they're trying to get somebody in the 405 to the final. They might as well race each other all the way to the final than have to race a Birdman or us or Megalodon or somebody that's equally as fast as they are. So I don't think they're out to destroy no prep racing either. They're there to produce a television show, and that's what everybody forgets. It just happens to be centered around a race. They're not there to put on a race. They're there to do a TV show. They don't care what anybody else is doing because they have deadlines.
And they pick something popular.
100%.
They're giving spectators something to go see, man. I mean, from an industry perspective, me as a provider, I think that's a huge deal. I don't care if they're putting on drifting events. It's people are out there watching, building, fixing, braking, supporting, tuning, all these things that support it. I mean, our industry really. I think it's a good in the end. They're going to have to be a lot worse than the crap that I'm hearing right now for me to think that it's not worth doing. You know what I mean? I mean, what would have something?
The good thing is they got Jim Hughes involved now and Lonnie involved, so they're looking outside, their own people to try and get some help because they're the first ones to admit they don't have a clue. They can put on a pretty good TV show, but they're not real concerned or really understand how a drag race should work. And there was some hiccups this weekend where there was a lot of time between rounds, but for the most part, next to a national event, that's as busy as I've seen Topeka in 25 years, probably. So,
I mean, these guys hit the lottery. Think about it. They're a production company making a TV show, and realistically, their production costs are getting covered by the fans in the stadium or at the racetrack. So they're producing this shit for free. They're probably actually making money on it, in my opinion.
I'm hoping the racers are paid, or the people who are promoting it too. It'd be nice to see the love spread around a little bit.
And I think
that's the one thing I know that's been a little frustrating for some of the smaller guys that, that were told last year, hey, next year we'll be able to pay you guys some tow money and stuff. And so some of those guys I know spread themselves real thin to try and, make sure they could compete last year so that they, could be a part of it this year. And then they obviously didn't end up there with tow money. And so that kind of hurt some guys, but that's not unheard of either. Drag racing promoters have been lying for 50 years, so.
I mean, you're talking about the Matt Frost, guys like that are, they're spending big bucks traveling these races. They're spending a lot of money to try to keep up with these guys. Like, maybe they need to pay out a little bit lower. They're making enough money. Maybe they need to pay out down to the semifinals or quarterfinals or something instead of just the winner.
But the thing you got to remember, this is not a poor man's sport. We spent $100,000 over the last 3 weeks between 3 people. We didn't win a race last year, but they split in the semis. Semis get 25. typically, depending on who wins, it's up to them. But typically, the winner gets 25, runner-up gets 10, and then the semifinalists, get 2,500. If we wouldn't have been competitive at the first couple, we'd have stopped going. We have to use some common sense here. We can't keep running, 1,000 miles down the road, knowing that we don't have a chance in hell of winning, and then bitching that somebody should pay us for coming.
Wouldn't it be
And
that
that's
same
crazy.
cost or more to go run any of the other sanctions, though? I mean, at the same point. So, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, but sanctioned as what? I mean, this is the thing. This is effectively a new sanctioning body.
Point
I mean,
series.
For those of
these
us,
guys are really actors, depending on which way you're looking. Is it a race or is it a TV show?
No, it's a
If
race, man. I think it's
show,
legit.
If it's a TV show, then they're actors, then maybe they should get something. But if it's just a race,
It's televised like NHRA. It's a slightly different media outlet. Some of you guys sound like when the internet came out. I'm never going to distribute music that way.
Oh no, I'm not against it.
Okay, I was going to say.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
look at the
it's
stands. These guys are making money hand over fist with this stuff.
Somebody is, and I mean, I hope that it's the people that are putting on. I'd like to see some of that money be going more to the racers that are supporting it. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm getting at. You know, trickle that down. That you pay out an extra 10 grand, so a couple of your guys got some gas money to get home.
Do you know how much advertising costs for 30 seconds? I remember who was telling me that it was getting up to 7 figures for 30 seconds on the regular Street Outlaw show. That was back in like 2014 when I was hanging out with those guys.
Thing you got to remember, the people putting on the television show that are airing it are not the people producing it.
Right.
Pilgrim produces it. They sell it to Discovery. Discovery cuts a fat hog on the advertising.
Right.
So,
but I mean, I'm sure Pilgrim isn't dumb. I'm sure they're negotiating a pretty good deal.
Dude, Pilgrim has been around forever as one of the premier production companies for Discovery Channel. They make a fucking assload of money. Right. And there is nobody going to hold a telethon for those guys.
Right. I'm not feeling sorry for them. I'm just, it's kind of funny.
I think, we're forgetting that all of this is business at each and every level. And as Jeff points out, these guys are making a decision whether they get engaged in this. And people last year who got tow money, some of those people now got appearance money. And people this year that are paying the freight will probably get tow money for however long it lasts. And that money gets paid out in order to assure that they've got a show that works. Pilgrim is 51% owned by Lionsgate. And if you spend 15 minutes on the internet looking at Wikipedia, you can find out that Lionsgate and Pilgrim produce 51 different shows that are on a variety of all these networks and channels. So this is, in fact, big business, and people are looking at all of these things and
it's
working
a
this out
direct tie
down to a
between
gnat's
the little
ass.
guys. It's a direct tie between the little guys, like the Jeffs and the Larrys of the world. I know Jeff and Larry. That these are regular budget, regular dudes that makes his living putting chassis together and tuning them for other people so that he can go out and race a shop car. And so not huge budget. I mean, to me, it's just all good. I guess that's where I'm going with it. It's an alternative sanction for those guys. I mean, Jeff and them, they don't have the budget probably to go NHRA Pro Mod racing. Larry could build the car. He could put a hell of a combo together, but just to maintain the travel for the series and everything else is more dollars than what they're spending now. So it's a good solution for them. It's televised, so it's again, maybe even better than an NHRA event. Who knows? I'm not sure who watches more of which of the two programs, but I don't know. So far, it's a bunch of win-win.
More people watch this than NHRA.
Yeah, well, I guess. And I like
more
what
people
NHRA's
watch
been
my
doing.
live streaming video than watch NHRA drag racing.
Come on now. I like what NHRA's been doing.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding, dude. In 2015, 16, and 17, I had larger viewership totals than NHRA drag racing. So I'm not. This isn't I'm saying it. I'm
just tells
for
you
real,
what people want to watch and what media they want to
on.
use. But I guess my point is that so far there's just a whole lot of wins. I mean, I saw these guys griping about the new change in rules. Yeah, guess what? It's their sandbox stuff. Something's going to change a little bit, but it didn't seem like something super horrible. And I like I said, I'm not going to comment till I hear from basically Jeff, since he was there.
To be fair, it is on Discovery Channel, and you can see Chad's stuff on the internet everywhere. And NHRA really is only on like 2 channels. Like it usually ends up being Sports 1, which most people don't even watch. Yeah, and they put it on the wrong time.
The Ocho.
So
exactly.
And NHRA pays to be on Fox, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. They
we
pay to
raised
be on
40
channel.
grand in an NHRA Pro Mod races for 10.
Well, and NHRA, I mean, this goes to also, like, so one of my issues with drag racing in general nowadays is that, in this particular example, they're trying to pretend that this is a race while it's also a TV show. And so the message is mixed, all the time as to which thing it really is. So it depends on what day it is and what excuse they need to make as to what it really is for that, particular evening or event. NHRA is much the same because they have, they pretend that pro mod is a professional category, and yet it is never included in any professional category press releases during professional category televised portions of the event. No, none of that. Pro mod has always been the redheaded stepchild, and yet arguably the most popular drag racing on earth over the last 5 years has been pro mod drag racing. So that's kind of a sad state of affairs as well.
Arguably the most popular form of drag racing over the last 5 years has been the street outlaws. If you want to look at viewership numbers and all of that, and
2+ million people a night would sit down and watch.
Well, I'll tell you what, they set a record last fall at Bowling Green because we set it at LS Fest, having the most people on the property ever.
Yeah.
And they reset it a few weeks later when the Snow Prep series come. So, it's definitely good for drag racing. I know, it's lit a fire under the streetcar people too, because people are modding their cars. People, it's a trickle down effect. I mean, yes, it is entertaining, but we might not agree with all of their tactics because, they're trying to produce a TV show and it takes away from the true spirit of drag racing and whatnot on some, levels.
Yeah,
but it's still good for the overall industry.
It is.
Everybody in automotive is booming.
I mean, anytime you can get cars out in front of people, good.
It's a good thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of what we're seeing is from the original 4 or 5 guys, that kind of stuff. To me, that I think this came from those guys from a couple years ago. Branching off from that.
The truth of the matter is that racing went stale for a while, and as much as people hate that, it got popular again because of those guys on TV.
Yeah, I think so too. And 100%. I mean, some of those guys just keep putting all their life and time into it, whether they profited off it or not. Yay, hats off to those guys. So I think that's cool.
I will say that one thing that I find interesting, because I spend a lot of time doing a lot of things with aftermarket companies, and maybe Jeff can speak to this. I don't know if this is one of their concerns or not, but recently, my activities with SEMA and a lot of people at the manufacturer's level is that companies are holding on to their money. They're really happy with what's going on right now, but they're a little bit afraid that this is a wave that's gonna, crash and then not have another one right behind it. And so they're kind of, holding on. I think everybody's still, even though it's been a decade since the, whole crash, I think people are still a little more hesitant to really step up. And again, maybe Jeff and Bill can speak to that more, but I'm seeing that. I'm getting that message from people in the aftermarket. But at the same time, I think they're all spending more and more money on development, and we're getting cooler and cooler projects and cooler and cooler products of all kinds. I'm excited, I have to say, about one particular Aeromotive product. It makes me really, really happy, is the new, 2.0 version of their stealth fuel tanks. Have you guys seen these yet?
No, sir. James Short, have you seen these?
No.
Dude, oh my God, they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I'll give you the rundown, and unless Jeff wants to, or he can just interrupt me if I'm wrong. But basically, they invented the drop-in cool module with the Phantom and Stealth series, of systems, and they were awesome. But other people started knocking them off, and the thing about it was that they were offering fuel tanks. Then everybody else started offering fuel tanks for all the popular muscle cars, etc. Well, they've come out with a new version, and it still has a drop-in module, but the inlets and outlets and all of the connections now come out of the factory location in the fuel tank. You're buying a brand new fuel tank, so you don't have to use your old one. But again, the inlet and outlet, the sending unit, all that stuff is coming out of the factory location, which makes hooking it up way easier in the car, makes it a lot more streamlined. It's a really, really trick system. And how many different fuel pump options are you going to end up having in that, Jeff?
Only be able to do the 2 because we're limited on the outlet, on how big of a hose I can get out and back in. So a 340,
right?
340 will probably be the max. We do a 200 and a 340 right now, but we have been working on some multiple pump hangers for production gas tanks. In fact, I did a deal the other day on a 6th gen Camaro, a direct injection deal where we did triple 450s, used one of the 450s as a lift pump for the mechanical pump that's on the motor, and then use the other 2 450s to power a supplemental fuel system that had injectors in a sheet metal manifold, and it made about 1,380 horsepower on E85. So that's something that we're looking at. We also did seems like pickup truck has really taken off, so we've been concentrating on that 2002 up Chevrolet truck, and I can do single 340, dual 340, triple 340, single 450, double 450, triple 450, and all the production gas tanks now. It's a drop-in module. You can pulse width modulate whichever pump you want. Little high on the amperage draw because them things will pull about 18 amps at 80 psi. So you got to kind of watch out there. But it's 6 gallons a minute, so it'll support.
Wow,
that's
you say 450 pump. Now, what pump is that?
The Walbro.
Okay. Are you guys using the 267 or the 274?
267 most of the time.
Gotcha.
And we also now have the ability to we came out with a brush spur gear pump. We have a 3.5 gallon a minute pump and a 5 gallon a minute pump. I put a 3.5 in a Trailblazer gas tank the other day for Sean Ellington for their daily driver race that they televised here a couple, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it was interesting. It was loud, but it went in the stock gas tank. Actually, everything still worked. The float level units still worked. He drove it about 200 miles on a Saturday down to Akima. They had to drive down to Akima, and then they had to go on like an 80-mile drive. And we did not do anything to slow this pump down. We let it run wide open the entire time. Didn't have any hot fuel handling issues, probably because we're not trying to cool the brushes in the brush card anymore. Maybe we'll have some trouble in the future with that and stupid heat like it is today. Up over 100 degrees, we might have some issues. But right now, we haven't had anybody that's had any issues with either the 3.5 or the 5 running them wide open on the street.
Is that, Jeff,
for guys that want to pull? Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on that because this was going to be my question sooner or later in the conversation this evening, having come back from a long distance driving event and had fuel heating issues. But is heat from the motor sort of the primary source when we're talking about this long drive, big pump? Because we just bought that for a week. I'm just curious, and the brushless really helps with that, Jeff?
Yeah, because we're not trying to cool the brushes is basically where the majority of the heat is generated. So obviously we've gotten rid of them. We don't have to worry about trying to cool them. You still have a lot of other factors in there. Fiberglass is a great insulator, so we put fiberglass hoods on there. We put twin turbos on there. We do a lot of stuff, where the fuel rail has no insulator from the intake manifold. We know the intake manifold is engine temperature, so we're always introducing heat into the fuel. And at 3.5 gallons a minute, when you're down to a quarter of a tank of gas, you're recirculating, your entire load of fuel every minute. So I know we'll have problems, but we were optimistically excited about what we've seen so far. We haven't came out with a way to modulate these pumps yet. That's something the engineers are working on right now. Probably have it hopefully in the fourth quarter. But I got 6 or 7 of them that'll be on drag week, 5 gallon a minute pumps. So that'll be an interesting test. I didn't have any on Rocky Mountain Race Week. The drag week will be a test. We'll know after that week whether we're on something.
So what kind of, I know the answer, but I'm asking this. So what kind of horsepower will 5 gallons a minute support on, say, E85?
1,500.
1,500.
Yeah, pretty easy. You know, the cool thing about those pumps is they don't care about pressure. So the way the brushless motor works is it changes the timing. It tries to sustain a certain RPM. We use some 270 kilovolt motors. We use some bigger motors. So we'll say we're trying to run 2,700 pump speed RPM. As you start to load that electric motor, the controller will start to advance the timing to compensate for that. So we see very little fall off at 90 psi compared to 43 psi.
How high would those go? Would they go up to about 150?
Well, on the test stand at PRI and SEMA, we had one run at about 160, about 20 seconds before we started getting nervous about blowing stuff apart. They will eventually stall
Jeff,
it if we have not hit that. We've not tried to completely stall one out yet.
Now, Jeff, you talk about slowing them down and, pulse width modulated, fuel systems. Those are becoming more and more common in the OE stuff. If somebody has, let's say somebody has a fuel system like we have in the wagon, right, with an A1000, and a big feed line and a big return line. Ours runs, full speed all the time, and it seems to be okay. But if somebody wanted to pulse width modulate that, how does somebody go about that? What do you guys recommend?
We have a controller that we sell that will do that. We run an eliminator on Larry Chevy too. We've never slowed it down. I think a lot of it has to do with where you run fuel lines, where you have the pump, how big the gas tank is. We've never ran the Chevy 2 that I know of down to an eighth of a tank of gas where it's recirculating. But we have an electronic speed controller that basically you can trigger it multiple ways. You can put a curve into it. You can do a lot of stuff with it, and it works great for the A1000, for the eliminator, for the Pro Series pumps. It just does not work with the brushless stuff right now.
And is that just because of the way that the brushless motor works? I mean, is it purely an electronics issue?
What it is you have an electronic controller that controls the motor. So the only thing we could pulse modulate would be the controller, and it does not. It would not like that. You're not changing.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You're not changing the frequency of the speed of the electricity going into the actual motor. You would be changing it going into the controller.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm assuming these are probably AC pumps that you're using a DC to AC converter on. That's what you're.
No, they're actually designed as DC motors.
Oh, so they're actually DC brushless pumps.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The old. Well, here's a quick story. I was at Charlotte talking to some pro stock motorcycle guys, and through Waterman, which is another company that we own, we do a brushless pro stock motorcycle pump, which is basically one of Waterman's really small mechanical pumps bolted to a brushless motor. And one of the crew chiefs was Jerry Savoy's crew chief, is a big radio control plane and drone guy. So he's like, oh, I know all about brushless. We need to be able to do this. We need to be able to do this. We need to be able to do this. And he had some great points. He wanted to not necessarily be able to pulse modulate the pump, but he wanted to be able to take the pump to maybe 20% of its capacity, so that after they got done doing the burnout, they wouldn't recirculate the gas 4 times in the gas tank,
right?
Building heat. He talked about what 5 degrees of fuel temperature was in power, and that's something that we're looking at, being able to use maybe a TPS to be able to slow the pump down, so when it's not doing the burnout or it's not at wide open throttle,
sure,
it doesn't pump nearly as much fuel.
The original torque request. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people to do ECU tuning, I wonder who those might be. That would be one more thing to add to the list of variables to control that, at various
some of the
stages of the
OEMs
entire
back in
process.
some of the OEMs back in the day had fuel temp sensors. I ran into some Range Rover stuff, Land Rover stuff that had that.
Any of your guys, I don't know if Holly supports this or if Megasquirt does. I know the Haltech does. Your GM Flex Fuel sensors report fuel temperature.
The Megasquirt gets the temperature. I don't know that the Holly does yet.
Yep. It sends it over the same signal. The frequency is the ethanol content, 50 to 150 hertz is your 0 to 100% range. And then I want to say it's 1 millisecond to 5 milliseconds is the duration of that pulse that gives you your temperature from like negative 40 degrees to 257 or something like that.
Yep.
So it's not precisely amplitude and frequency, it's frequency and
pulse
duty
width.
cycle.
Yeah, and pulse width. Yeah, pulse width. Okay, that's interesting. So you get 2 for 1.
Yeah, from one data, from one signal, you get 2 pieces of data. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. And which ECUs are able to read that currently?
Megasquirt's had that for a long time.
I know Haltech does too, because I monitor fuel temps on mine
Evans,
myself.
did they put? Can you pull from the Holly? Can you pull the fuel temp yet? I don't think you can. Can you? Evans.
You might be able to configure a custom channel, maybe. I don't know if you can do pulse width on any of those digital inputs or not, though. I've never really tried.
Interesting. I think we lost.
So
Evans.
for you folks playing at home, make some notes on this. Go back and listen to this particular section of the podcast because there was some really interesting, meaty stuff there.
Yeah.
Jeff, with brushless, does that change our general understanding of the size of our feed and return lines? Does anything change on that in terms of your recommendations?
No, because the only thing that we are changing is the way we move the pumping mechanism. So we did a brushless A1000, which has the same roller vane pumping mechanism as a non-brushed or as a brushed A1000. Same thing with the Eliminator, same thing with the Pro Series. When we get into the spur gear pumps, those are the ones that really can get temperamental in bigger sizes. You can very rarely can you ever have too big of an inlet, a fuel inlet line. I've seen way too small ones all the time, but there's a reason that an A1000 is an ORB 10 inlet, and it's not because we want you to screw a 10 to a 6 in there. It's because we want you to screw a 10 in there. You would not believe how many people do not understand that. It's like we spent a lot of money designing these pumps, 25 years ago, and it's been a pretty good piece. The Eliminator and the Pro Series, the Eliminator you can get away with a 10. The Pro Series you got to use a 12. 3.5 and the 5 gallon pumps, you got to use a 12. You start playing with some of our belt drive stuff, our belt driven stuff, and I don't like to see anything smaller than 1.25 inches on a 16 gallon a minute pump or bigger. And we got some guys that, on some of the stuff have 2-inch inlets on some of the 35 gallon a minute pumps. And then you get into the top fuel stuff at 114 gallons a minute. And, you got 2-3-inch hoses on some of those. So it gets pretty crazy. But the brushless stuff all uses proven technology as far as pumping mechanisms. We've just added the brushless motor to it. And that came from actually the diesel world. Because diesel fuel is such a good conductor of electricity, we needed to get the brushes out of the electric motor since we were going to flow fuel through it. So that was our first endeavor into the brushless world, was through the diesel product that we make.
Can you comment on the current draw compared to a normal brushed pump of equivalent size?
It's about 20% less. I can tell you a 5 gallon a minute pump doing about 4.6 gallons a minute at 100 PSI draws less than 20 amps.
Oh, wow. So it's like close to like 450 territory then, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
It's no more amp draw than a 450 with 4.5 times the flow.
Also less of a noise signature on the power supply.
I
I
have a question about the power. I stepped away for a minute. I was listening. I just was muted. With the power side, because you guys are controlling, you said you're controlling the RPM of the motor. If I put in more voltage, is it still trying to command the same RPM, or does that end up going up? So like a normal pump, if I've got 13 volts, it puts out one amount of flow, and if I turn up the voltage, the pump turns up and it puts out more. So does your new brushless stay the same with higher voltage, or does it go up as well like traditional pumps?
It will go up as well, just like traditional pumps, because we're powering the power that we are giving to the pump is what's going to the electric motor. The controller decides what to do with it, but it has no way of displacing power. So it has to use that power somewhere. So yeah, a 16 volt, 5 gallon a minute pump is almost 6 gallons a minute. We did some stuff with 18 volt stuff for the Pro Stock motorcycles, and we almost doubled the flow at 18 volts that we had at 12 volts.
What's the upper limit of voltage on that particular thing?
24 right now. I think we're probably not for continuous duty 24, but I think we can handle 3 or 4 minutes at 24, no problem. The cool thing about it
alternator putting out 18.9, not a problem.
Yeah. No, because typically the more voltage we throw at things, the less amps, the thing sees. So that was what was really cool about when we started playing. We started playing with some 18 volt Makita drill batteries on the Pro Stock motorcycles, and it was interesting that them guys run about 100 psi of base fuel pressure, and with a 24 volt battery, the amp draw was about 8 amps. With a 12 volt battery, the amp draw was about 16 amps. So it was kind of an eye opener there. Hector Arano's kid was the first one to go 200 miles an hour with a Pro Stock motorcycle. That had an Aeromotive design fuel system in it, which was 2 commercially available small inline pumps ran in series.
Awesome.
And he's broke 200 miles an hour 3 times with that pump, and then we got him on the new Waterman pump, and he broke 200 with that pump also.
Wow.
So,
yeah, your voltage and amperage are basically inverse of one another, just much like flow and pressure is. It's if you double your voltage, you decrease your amperage in half because it's basically a wattage calculation.
Sure.
Ohm's
Easy
law.
as pie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ohm's law, pretty basic stuff.
And back to the quick question of somebody asked about the Holly doing the
Fuel temperature.
It does not currently. I believe you probably could set up a channel. If you can use any frequency channel to get pulse width. And so
you probably could pick that up.
You could split that out, and then you could. Yeah, you could definitely split it because it's a 5 volt signal. I mean, you're using a pull up resistor to get it from whatever it is up to the 5 volts.
Yeah.
But you could split that at that point to 2 inputs, and you could use one that's a frequency input, knowing that it's already got a.
So there would be a way to pull that off. I had nobody done that yet.
If you use one of the frequency inputs, that's also, I think they're also labeled with an S. Anything with an S has the 1K resistor in it. So you just got to keep that in mind that there's a 1K resistor in line also.
Gotcha. Wow, that's good. That's interesting stuff, man. Good tech. Well, who's got questions?
So I'd like to sneak back to I'm completely selfish here. I want to talk about what I want to talk about. No,
go for it. It's good. It's deep tech.
Go, Bill Fowler. Go.
Yeah. So a little over a week and a half ago, I attended an event that involved long distance driving of quote high performance cars, which was not Rocky Mountain Race Week. So you can all make fun of me later. But the bottom line is,
it's all right. You can say power tour. It's okay.
Yeah. I know.
It's okay to be power tour.
Yeah, I'm going to take crap over that. Anyway, so the bottom line is we experienced some fairly serious fuel heating issues. This was in a pretty mild. Unfortunately, it was the classic Pro Street car. It had a aluminum fuel cell fully enclosed in the trunk, which was in turn fully enclosed by bags of clothes, we'll say vendor merchandise, and a variety of other things. And then we were driving in 95-degree heat with 90% humidity. And even with half a tank in a 16-gallon cell, we heated it so bad going into Raleigh, we just had to pull over to the side of the road and we were done. And we were running just to be honest, Jeff, an A1000. And we did not have, originally, we didn't have any sort of management on it. We were later using a PCM controller on it. It's still just beat the hell out of the fuel. So for people having fuel heating issues, what are the things that they can do to avoid fuel heating issues in cars that are really driven, for distances on the street?
Well, the big thing is don't put 1,000 horsepower pump on something that makes 250 horsepower. That's the biggest problem. Obviously, you weren't consuming much fuel cruising down the road, even if you did make 1,000 horsepower. Pump sizing is very important. The thing that everybody overlooks is when we introduce a vacuum into that fuel tank, we lower the boiling temperature of that fuel. That's another problem.
So have a good vent.
Good vent's a must. Duraley makes an atomic cooler. It may not be rated for fuel, but it works wonderful for fuel. I have a friend of mine that did power tour last year with a C6 Corvette and an eliminator pump, and does not slow the pump down, just has the cooler mounted up in the nose of the car where it can get a little bit of fresh air. And he never had any problems. Drop a piece of dry ice in the fuel cell. That's the easiest way to get rid of it.
No.
And the dry ice, when it boils off, doesn't create any issues in the gas.
How does
I love that.
That's a good idea.
I was going to say, just put a bag of ice in there.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, we stacked it with ice. We completely stacked it with actual ice around it. And in my own defense, this was a John Kazi 521 with a Vortex supercharger using a blow-through setup. So we weren't a complete candy ass on the motor.
So mostly. Just a quick question. How hot is too hot of a temperature, Jeff? Do you guys, I'm having more guys where I'm just like, look, it's like $12 to put a GM coolant temp sensor in there. Maybe $20.
Yep. In line even.
There's a lot of variables. Elevation has a variable. How much vacuum is being introduced in the gas tank has a variable. We've seen gasoline boil at as low a temperature as 116, 118 degrees.
Wow.
In a worst case scenario, you go to Denver, start playing up there in the high elevation. It gets bad fast.
Yeah.
And today's gasoline's pretty junky. That's the other problem.
The good parts
and
burn off quick. Yeah.
Well, in a lot of places that have winter and summer gas, you get the real old winter blend, which is terrible in the heat. And, as the gas stations slowly get it sold and get it off, especially if you're putting premium in, that's the last one to ever run out of the winter blend. We see
Buy from a busy station.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? If you're not going to stand on it, put the junk gas in it, because they've sold a lot more junk gas than they have premium.
Right.
And, ethanol. Ethanol is another thing that doesn't like heat. We haven't done a lot of testing with E85 or even, the E10 stuff that's everywhere to know if it's more susceptible to heat than regular old gasoline. But typically, if you can slow the pump down, to about 40% of what it's running, you can probably get away with it. Like I said, there's so many different things. We have people that have problems, and then they send pictures of their car, and they got 3-inch exhaust that wraps around the fuel tank, and it's like, all right, guy, hello, there's a problem. Or they run the fuel line right next to the dang tailpipe all the way up the side of the frame rail. There's a lot of things you can do to build little air ducts underneath the car to try and pass some air over the fuel line. Circle track racers ran fuel coolers that were basically just finned pieces of aluminum tubing that came in like 3 foot, 4 foot, and 6 foot lengths. And it was typically like 1/2-inch pipe on both ends. And it had fins all over it, and everybody laughed, but we've used them on street cars before to try and take some of the temperature out. But a good old fashioned, nice transmission cooler or a fuel cooler works wonders.
Justin McMurtry added to this because they add more butane to the fuel. As long as it is below a certain vapor pressure, they send it out. And I remember him at one of my classes. He's an expert on this stuff. Chemistry gurus.
If a guy's going to run a fuel cooler like that, do you want them to run that on the pressure side or the return side on their system?
No, run it on the return side. It'll put about 1.5 pounds of fuel pressure back in the thing. So obviously when you put it on, you'll have to change fuel pressure. But I'm afraid on the pressure side, most of those things come from the Pacific Rim. And I would feel really bad if, after 4 or 5 years, of 60 psi going through it that it decided to fall apart.
Somebody's asking about quality aftermarket fuel tank vents. Do you know of any? Do you guys recommend any? Is there anybody out there for an aftermarket fuel tank vent?
Big A in line and a metal blowdown tube.
Jeff, thoughts on that?
Ask that question again.
He's
Scott,
asking about an aftermarket fuel tank vent. Do you have any recommendations? We talked about vent size on the last podcast when Jeff was on, so go back to that one. You see it at RealTuners.com. But
no, not really. I mean, the bigger the better, obviously, to an extent. If you don't have to have a rollover valve in it, I just like sticking a -10 bulkhead in it and then putting one of the little K&N breathers with the little worm clamp on it on there. That's one of the things people don't take into consideration. As fast as the fuel is leaving that fuel cell, air has to enter that fuel cell, and it brings dirt and dust and all kinds of crap in with it.
Filter it. Yeah.
Not having a filter on it will definitely prolong pre-pump fuel filter life. So something to consider.
Good call.
Clean that filter every time you clean your air filter or more, because it's underneath the car.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that causes all kinds of issues. We have more people that, put a paper element between the tank and the pump and just can't understand why the pump, can't pull fuel through a 10 micron element.
I ran into that the other day, and now it's like, we talked about that before, and now I'm paranoid. But
yeah, suck through stainless, push through paper.
Right.
And anybody that's doing any big mechanical pump stuff, don't put an inlet filter on it. Filter your gasoline or your alcohol as you're pouring it into the fuel cell. And if a lot of guys don't run a post pump filter. If you are going to run a post pump filter, a 10 micron microglass is the way to go. A lot of these guys sell a 10 micron stainless post filter, but you can't clean the damn thing. I don't care how long you scrub on it, wash on it, do whatever you want to do on it. You cannot get the crap out of it. So we sell a microglass 10 micron filter. They're about $35-$40, and you throw one away, after, here's the other thing. Right when you get the car done, that's the dirtiest the fuel cell's ever going to be. So brand new car, brand new build, run it for about a week and then throw all the filters away or clean all the filters and put new ones in. Because no matter how much you clean that aluminum fuel cell that the chassis shop built for you, you will not get all the crap out of it. You won't get all the crap from the hose that you made. It's amazing.
The hose is a big thing for all the dirt and crap, because if you cut a fuel line, most people who go to cut it, if you cut like a braided stainless line, most people don't have a great cutter. So a common way of doing it is to wrap the thing in electrical tape and then cut through it with like either a hacksaw, or you can use like a cutoff wheel on an angle grinder. And a lot of people do that, and all that does is puts a whole lot of debris down to the hose. And you think that you can clean it out, blow it out, and get it all out, but there's still little pieces that are going to come out of it over time as the gas goes through it and breaks them free. All that stuff's going to go straight into whatever's next in line. So, you risk when you do that. You got to remember that you're probably going to put some of that trash into the injectors, because there's hose after the pump. You're probably going to put a bunch of it into the filter as it cycles through. So you want to do a little bit and then clean everything really, really good, and then get rid of the filters and put new ones on. Use some cheap filters just to catch all the bad dirt that you first made, and then you can put some more expensive ones in if you want.
Just statistically speaking, I do first starts. That's one of the most popular remote tunes I do, is the first startup, and that's where people save a lot of time. We'll just go through everything for an hour. About 35% of my new startups are having injector contamination issues.
Well, here's something I get all the time. I took the filters out because they keep getting clogged. Hey, dumbass. If that's happening, that means the filters are doing their job, and the rest of your system.
Something else causing the problem.
Something else is causing the problem.
And he's just throwing that out there. He's not talking about any people that are specific.
That's not specific. It happens all the time. And the same thing with people swapping between fuels. They go from gas to 85 or 85 to methanol.
Seems to cause problems.
All of them clean each other out very well. So, if you run the car on gas for a couple of years, you switch to 85. The 85 cleans all the crap, all the residue left from the gas. So that's all going to get in your filters.
And the other thing you got to remember when it comes to filters, there's a reason our filters are not cheap. but our smallest filter is 36 square inches of pleated material. Some of this stuff from offshore and some of my competitors, they put a rock inside their fuel filter, or they put a disc inside their fuel filter.
It's
and
the size
it
of
has
a quarter.
less than 1 square inch of surface area.
Yeah.
The thing plugs up instantly. So we have more fuel pumps get destroyed by fuel filters, whether it's an improper fuel filter or whether it's the wrong fuel filter. Having a 10 micron on the inlet side, it absolutely just destroys anybody's inline pump. The pump tries so hard to pull fuel through it,
Sure,
that it just burns itself up.
Yep, it overheats and it melts.
Yeah.
And we've also had many post filters that got dirty. And on the big mechanical stuff will crush the filter inside the housing when it gets dirty.
Wow.
Damn. Huh. Hey, look at the clock. It's 10 o'clock. It's time to go. I got to pack my bags. Why,
where are you going?
I'm going to Detroit first thing in the morning, man. I got a class this weekend. I've got 3 seats left for any of you Detroit listeners that want to come to the class this weekend. If you're smart, get together a group of 3 and knock $100 off each of you. But, yeah, dude, JP DeLisi shop, JZ Auto in Detroit, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Be there. It's 2-day class. It's my standalone stuff, standalone basics. It's actually basics and advanced, a day of each. But I'm leaving in the morning, so that's how I want to get this thing wrapped up. Anybody else got questions? Any of you guys online here got questions for Jeff before we go? I think we got all the ones addressed from the Facebook chat.
When's the next show?
Thank you for coming on here today, Jeff. That was awesome.
Jeff,
We appreciate
thanks,
it.
man. That was outstanding.
Not a problem. Now that I'm smart enough to make all this high-fangled technology work,
High-fangled. Gonna remember that.
Yeah.
It's high-fangled.
Yeah. It's not your fault.
All right, cool. Well, all right, guys. I'll hit the mute button and send them on their way out here. But thanks again, everybody, for tuning in tonight. We very much appreciate it. It's our 1-year anniversary. It was kind of a cool show. This one will be a popular one, I'm sure. So, class this weekend in Detroit. Check us out at RealTuners.com if you're interested, or just show up. We got 3 seats left. Anyway, that's about it. Hope everybody, if you didn't like the new intro, let me know, and we'll just change it up. We have to buy that music. It's like $35 a pop, but anyway, I sprung for some new music. If you don't like it, let me know. We'll talk to you guys. We'll be back on at our regular schedule this coming Wednesday. Everybody have a good week. Be safe. Retorque all those nuts and bolts and take care.